doctors with ADHD talked about being in the ER and what a blessing ADHD is. They saw things so differently that they were never thrown off by the chaos, and they
Yes.
could look at 500 different scenes
At one time.
at one time and make sense out of it.
Yes. It's a difference, not a defect. And I was reading that in some things recently, and I thought that's a great phrase. I love that. How can I help? What can I do to help them be successful or to overcome in that area?
Welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, Thriving in Your Homeschool. We are more than halfway through the summer, which means most of us have some plans underway for the coming school year. That is why I am so happy to have my dear friend Beth Moore on the podcast today. Beth has spent 25 years in education across public, private, and homeschool classrooms, teaching preschool through second grade and leading elementary and middle school homeschool co-op classes. She holds a master's degree in early childhood education from the University of Alabama at Birmingham and several certifications for working with students with special needs. Beth has encouraged and counseled several thousand families in their homeschooling journeys. Beth homeschooled her own two children, Daniel and Samantha, through graduation. Beth brings a rare combination of classroom training and hard-won real-life homeschool experience to every conversation about every child, including those who learn differently.
Beth, thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, we have had such good times together over the years,
We have.
working in the homeschooling space together. And I just cannot, as parents start or they begin to plan for the new school year, for those who are slow planners, for those who are early planners, they may have already dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. But to me, this is really an encouragement for moms and dads as they begin the new school year. And we'll talk about all your experience with neurodivergence in children, but we'll also just talk about all your experience in counseling families in terms of getting ready for the new year. So, first, before we get into any of that, tell us your homeschool story.
Well, I had been thinking about homeschooling even when we lived in Tennessee and my son was like 3.
Now, was he your oldest?
He's my oldest.
Okay.
And he was very ADHD.
Okay.
And I just thought this child will not make it in school because I had been a school teacher.
Right.
And so I went to a homeschool conference and was very excited and ready to start. Maybe he was about 4. And then we ended up moving to Texas. And when we moved to Texas, he wanted to go to the school. And so I took him. It was a little neighborhood school, and it was very sweet, and they were good. But when he got in 4th grade, he just wanted to homeschool, and because he loved learning, and in fact, he would get in trouble for reading at school.
Isn't that so? He was ADHD, but he loved to read.
He
So this is
did.
important for people to know who have children who have ADHD or dyslexia or special needs.
Oh, definitely. And he was dyslexic and a little gifted, so he was kind of like all over the place. But he really wanted that, and so we were going to do it. And we ended up moving to South Carolina, and that was the best, thing because homeschooling was very big here, and, it wasn't hard to homeschool, and, so we started he was 5th grade, and my daughter was 2nd grade, and she also had just been diagnosed as dyslexic. So, I knew that we were gonna need to really work on reading and spelling and those kind of things, but, this was just a great environment to start when we moved here.
Okay. So tell us, we covered it a little bit in the introduction, but tell us some about your educational background. I mean, what you majored in college, what you did educationally, and then also the certifications you have when it comes to children who are neurodivergent.
Well, I, got my master's in early childhood and had begun work on my doctorate, and then I met my husband, and those plans fell apart, so I never finished. I'm not a doctor. Um So I had that experience with young children and had I thought, a good background in reading. I learned that there was much more that I did not know. that I was able to learn and pick up, and as, an opportunity came up when I was homeschooling the kids for some part-time work as an educational therapist. So I went to that interview and, kind of observed what they were doing, and I was like, "This is the same type of thing that my son got in Texas when he went to a special class that really helped him." I recognized the, techniques that they were using, and they were extremely effective. It was all based on Orton Gillingham, and those children knew more, phonetic principles and rules than I did at that time. So, I was very interested and did the training with NILD,
And that stands for?
the National Institute of Learning Development.
Okay,
Although
okay.
it really actually is international, it's in 16 countries.
Wow.
A lot of
Well,
missionaries, sometimes if their children had trouble reading,
mhm.
would get the training so that they could work with their own students.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you're doing all of this while you're homeschooling your kids.
I did, you know, God was good and I was able to work out the timing of things and, um, had the training and did that part-time while I, was homeschooling and really just learned so much about, dyslexia and, uh, neurodivergent children at that time.
Okay, so for those of us who don't know, tell us what the word neurodivergent means, and is it different from learning disabled or what?
It actually includes learning
Okay,
disabilities, and
okay,
it's just kind of like an umbrella term
okay,
that just means those are brains that process things differently. They a lot of it times they process visual information differently.
okay. What does that mean?
Well, a dyslexic person,
Uh
when they
huh.
look at a thing of letters, they don't see it the same way as we do. Like we see letters, we see words. It may be kind of jumbled up to them on the page. So we have to help them. And it depends because dyslexia is a spectrum.
Okay.
There are people that are little dyslexic, and then there are people that have um, very serious dyslexia that is very difficult for them to overcome. But with the right techniques and materials, it's not that they can't learn, they can. They just learn differently.
Right, right. So we have come across 2 friends, during our years of homeschooling who were medical doctors that
Oh,
had ADHD, and they talked about one of the doctors actually told us professors, "You don't want me in the classroom. If you trust me to do the work, I'll do the work at home, and I'll take the exams." And he graduated from med school.
hmm.
But both of those doctors with ADHD talked about being in the ER and what a blessing ADHD is.
Oh, yes.
But I can't remember if one was dyslexic or not, but they saw things so differently that they were never thrown off by the chaos, and they
Yes.
could look at 500 different scenes
At one time.
at one time and make sense out of
Yes.
it.
Yes. Because that is how their brain just works. It's just fast. Their brain is always fast, always going. Um, and actually, I'll have to say my son might have gotten a little ADHD from me because I realized as a kindergarten teacher, I was always, I knew what was going on in every corner of the room. And I could talk to this one and snap at that one and, point and direct. And um, having learned later in life that I thought that that was something I might have because I was studious, I didn't get in trouble, but I always was a busy bee.
Right, right. Yes, sometimes somebody told me the other day, "Zan, you are definitely ADHD." But I never thought about that because I focused so well, but
Right.
I always learned more at home. Like, I would get through the school day, I'd do all the extracurricular things, and then I might start studying at 10 o'clock when the household was
Quiet.
quiet,
Hmm.
and I wouldn't mind studying. Even in junior high school and high school, I studied from like 10 at night till 2 or 3 in the morning, and I loved it because it was just total focus
Yes.
then. And I still write that way. When I was homeschooling, I had so much to do with the kids. If I needed to write legislatively or I was working on a book, I'd start at 10 when the household was
Mhm.
quiet and I'd write till 2 or 3. I remember Joe said to me one time, "Do you think when the kids graduate, you'll ever write during the daytime?" And I have tried it and I can't do it. I need to come in here when the world is quiet
Mhm.
and I have 5 hours ahead of me, and then I can write.
Well, and that's how there are many different types of ADHD. So it's not always we when we say that, we think of the child that's just, like, running in circles,
Right.
which was my child.
Right.
Um,
I had a child like that too, and I just wanna say to moms out there, he's a very successful salesman today
yes.
because what does he do? He walks and he moves and he talks all the
Yes.
time, and he's compassionate, and he
Yes.
knows what he's talking about. So, I just think it's funny. Did it bother you at all when you realized as a teacher that Daniel was ADHD and both of your children were dyslexic? Or did you have the the opportunity to know or the brilliance to know that they learn differently and it's a gift, not something that's wrong with them?
Exactly. It's a difference, not a defect.
Yeah, okay.
And I was reading that in some things recently, and I thought that's a great phrase. I love that. But no, as a mom, it broke my heart. I cried. I was reading a book, and it was one of the things they talked about was the difficulty making friends, keeping friends. And, as a mom, you want your child to succeed and be happy. And, if there's difficulties there, it does break your heart. But then you have to, put on your mom, take a sniffle and get on with business and see how can I help? What can I do to help them be successful or to overcome in that area? Just and knowing that it's not going to look the same for him as it does for other people.
Right,
And
that's
that's
right.
okay.
That's right. So now tell us about your daughter, Samantha.
Well, my second child, Samantha, was also dyslexic. And when we homeschooled, she loved it. But she even in second grade wrote little goals on a index card. And one of her goals was, I'm going to have a scholarship to USC.
When
And
she was in the 2nd
she
grade.
did. And I thought, oh, I'm not quite sure we're going to get there, but we'll
Yeah,
try. We'll do our best.
uh-huh.
Because spelling was always very, very difficult for her.
Right.
In high school, I wasn't sure if we would graduate spelling the word very, Very, correct. Um, but I did find a good resource as an educational therapist that really did help, and she gained several years in spelling, and she graduated cum laude from USC in Beaufort, and she did have
Oh,
scholarships.
isn't that something? There's this book, I think it's David and Goliath. It's by the guy who wrote Outlier. I'm gonna have to find it and put it in the show notes. But in his book, he talks about, one of the stories he talks about is a dyslexic attorney. And because he was so dyslexic, a lot of times he just had to memorize
Yes.
his all of his opening statements, closing
Mhm,
statements, but because he memorized so quickly, he could remember obscure things in the law from
mhm.
things he had read in law school. I mean, the story is really incredible, and it made him this sought after, successful lawyer because of the way he had to teach himself to learn. And so it's like God uses all these things to direct our paths and to channel us into the place he wants to go. And maybe that's why we like the term neurodivergent, because it just shows a difference, like you said, and not a defect.
Right. And usually, especially kids with ADHD and dyslexics, have incredible gifts. They're normally very creative. I mean, we probably wouldn't have any light if it hadn't been for a dyslexic, Thomas Edison. Um,
Right.
and a lot of the people that are very famous, schools put them out and their mothers taught them.
Yes. Yes, that is very true. And I remember reading somewhere that the things sometimes that will drive you crazy about your children are their biggest gifts in life,
Hmm.
just like the very active child who wants to learn not by sitting but by moving and talking and
Yes.
doing, they become some of the most successful people in the world.
Oh, they do.
And so it's really counterintuitive, but it should make us very patient and thankful for each one of our children. The child who can sit at a desk for 5 hours without moving and the child who can't sit there for 5 minutes. They're each made in God's
They
image
are.
with a calling to fulfill.
Oh, they definitely are, and it doesn't mean that, especially when they're little, that you are not a tired mama at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I
that's
put
right.
my kids to bed very early. I even in Texas, it would be light late in the summer. I got room darkening shades. I was like, "I don't care what season it is. At 8 o'clock, we're going to bed, and we're starting at 7."
Right. So, what are some of the other neurodivergent issues, I guess, if that's the right word, besides dyslexia and ADHD?
Well, there's dysgraphia, where they have a hard time, writing,
Mm,
dyscalculia, where they have a hard time with math,
okay.
um, there's sensory processing orders, and, ASD obviously is, like, number 1
Okay, now
on
I
the
don't know what
list.
that is.
It is autism, but it's
Oh,
like
oh, okay.
autism spectrum disorder, so
Oh,
then they
okay,
do
okay. I've
ASD for
never heard the
short.
initials. Okay.
Um, that's like the top,
Okay.
and then and actually, my son, when he was, like, close to 25, was diagnosed on with the ASD and not just, ADHD.
Mhm.
And as a mother, I felt so guilty. I was like, "I should have known." And then I thought, "No, I took him to all kinds of doctors. They should have known."
Yeah, right,
But
right.
some differences in social things showed up, when he was in college.
Okay.
It was hard for him um, to plan and to manage everything. And knowing now what I wish I knew then, I wish I had had accommodations set for him in college, and even that we'd, been maybe more selective with our choice of
Right.
where we went to maybe a smaller school. And there's actually even great colleges that there's one in Tennessee that operates on a schedule for ADHD people.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, like
Yes,
maybe they
that is
take one
amazing.
class at a time.
Mhm, mhm. Well, that is interesting. The dysgraphia, I know we had around our house. It was like the pencil would just jump out of a hand. I
Oh,
mean, it was
yes,
like
yes.
and then one day, I can remember, with Ty, he just one day just started writing and never quit. And it was really and he was so expressive and so deep and personal in the way he wrote. All
Mhm.
of my kids were just good writers in different fields. Lizzie's
Right.
very creative and writes a lot in the news. John's an attorney and does a lot of writing, like briefs and those things. And then I would say that Ty is my most um, emotionally available writer. I don't know, but just
Has deep connections,
yes,
probably.
deep connections with whatever he's writing
Mhm.
about. And so you just see the giftedness in all different types of children and learners.
This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com.
So somebody asked me, um, if your child is diagnosed with any type of neurodivergence, what do you do during the first 30 days? And then what do you do during the first school year?
Well, the first 30 days, if you get a diagnosis, then you know what you're I mean, and it's not to label or anything like that, but it's to know what you're dealing with so you know, how to address it and the different things that you need to do. If you belong to an association that has counseling for homeschoolers,
Okay,
that
so
is a
right,
vital
so
thing. We do that at
so with
SCAES.
SCAES, South Carolina Association of Independent Homeschools, which is the organization Joe and I founded in 1990 and
Mhm.
was legalized in 1992, we've always had if we didn't have a department for, um learning disabilities or kids with special needs, and then it was called exceptional learners.
Mhm.
Now we have counselors who are really skilled in that, and it does make a difference. And I just want to say, too, here, Beth, and I want you to comment on this that really the area of neurodivergence and kids with special needs is the most growing segment in the homeschooling community.
It is.
Speak to that for us and tell us why. If the schools have all of these programs and all why are parents homeschooling kids who are neurodivergent?
A lot of times there have been reasons over the years that have broken my heart. Um, and if I had time to be a full-time advocate, I'd probably have a job
Mhm.
because a lot of places, the way these kids are treated in school, because school being neurodivergent means you do things differently. You don't do things the way statistically everybody does.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the school settings, most of them, are set up for the typical person, and they don't like to divert from it.
Right.
And so a lot of times these kids' needs are just not being met. And the parent is so frustrated. The kid is so frustrated. A lot of them have had to be put on anxiety medicine because it's just
Okay.
been such a bad experience.
Okay. To
And
be in an institutional setting
yes,
with okay. Okay.
and so, I mean that's what I'm finding is that a lot of the people that we work with are coming from public education. It's not that this is their first attempt at homeschool, but they're coming from mostly public schools, and they just don't feel like their needs are being met, and they think, well, heck, I could do better,
Right, right.
and they
So,
can.
Beth, I want to talk about what you've done at SCAES a little bit, and I know there are other organizations around the country that have special consultants and counselors for all types of kids. So we have at SCAES, we have an elementary department, middle school, and high school, which are
Hmm.
together because homeschooling at that level is different than homeschooling in the elementary years.
Yes.
Just different age groups and requirements and all of that. But then also at SCAES, you have probably counseled thousands of parents as they've started homeschooling and continued homeschooling. So when a parent finds out for the first time they have a child who has a diagnosis, and I don't mean to make that sound like a defect, but it is
Right.
something that you need to be aware of
Right.
so you can teach that child
Right.
a
The
core
way that they learn.
yes, the way that they learn. So, what would you tell a parent? I call in and I tell you, I think my child just didn't learn in school. I'm withdrawing him. I'm homeschooling him. What do you tell that parent?
Well, usually I ask what was going on. Tell me what's going on, and then I'll say, well, you know, uh, in reading, let's look at reading. What type of things are we seeing in reading, or in spelling? And because one of the best ways, especially if people aren't sure, is nonsense words because it's critical that dyslexic kids develop a sound symbol association because if they don't have that, they're not going to be able to read. I mean, they might be great at memorizing, but you
But
can't
yes,
memorize everything.
that's right. And you're talking about phonics when you
Phonics,
say that. Yes.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
and actually, personally, I think that's best not just for neurodivergent kids, but I think for everybody. If everybody was
Absolutely.
taught that way, then I don't think there'd be an issue.
I just want to say here that Alex Newman wrote a book, and I think it was called "The Crimes of the Educators," and he talks in there about the importance of teaching phonetically and what it does to children who don't learn to read phonetically. Depression, lack of accomplishment, suicide. I mean, it's really an incredible journey. And if you've never thought about that before, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast.
Well, that would be a good one, but it is definitely. I haven't written a book, but just from my experience, if they and that's what the Orton Gillingham method is built on, is the building that sound symbol with very sequential phonetic teaching, and that's vital. Sometimes it might be that their issue was in math, and then we have to look at, did we develop a good sense of number? And so I'll ask them what the problem is when they call in, and then think of resources that I know. And if it's something that I don't know about, there was somebody that had some issue. I can't remember what it was, but I didn't even know what it was. I had to look it up. Um, then we'll do some research and help them figure out what kind of materials does this child need to be successful, and what is success at this level going to look like. If we're years behind, we're most likely not going to gain several years, of a skill by the end of the year. But
Right.
what is a realistic thing that we can look at?
Thank you so much for joining me today. We're only halfway through this conversation, so be sure to come back next week for part 2 with Beth Moore. Check the show notes for any links or resources mentioned in this episode. Until next time, keep thriving in your homeschool.